Well, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to tell you a story, and this story actually exists in many different traditions. But this one comes from North America and is from the indigenous Americans to the indigenous people to the Americas. And this story is about a piece of land. And no one really cared about this. Hey, Izzy, no one really cared about this piece of land until one day a cow walked upon it. And then the two people who kind of bordered this land were trying to decide whose cow who did the cow belong to, him or the other. And they didn't know who this cow belonged to, because they didn't know who the land belonged to. So they actually thought, how do we decide? And someone said, well, I think my grandparents were here long before yours, so I think it belongs to me. And the other said, no, I think my grandparents were here first, so I think it belongs to me. So they got into this really heated argument. Have you ever been in a heated argument? Or even just an argument? Yeah, oh, I hear a lot. Thank you for your honesty, Izzy. Yeah, I get into arguments a lot, especially with my family. We have family, we argue more with our family, and we can argue over silly things. But anyway, these two people got into a really silly argument and said, how are we going to resolve this argument? Who owns this piece of land? And no one had cared about it for years until this cow walked upon it. And then they decided, let's go and talk to the local judge, because he might know what it was. So they went to talk to the local judge, and he looked at all the information and said, we don't know who owns the land. And they thought, maybe we'll go and talk to the local minister, the religious leader. He's quite wise. And so they went to talk to the local leader, and they said, I don't know who owns. He said, well, who else can we ask? He thought, who's been here the longest? And he thought, the local indigenous people have been here the longest. Let's go and talk to their leader. So he went and talked to the leader and said, we've got this argument about who owns this piece of land. Do you know? He said, well, I don't know, but I'm willing to solve this for you. Will you come out to the land with me? But you have to abide by my decision, regardless of what you think of it. And so the two men and this indigenous leader went out to the land, and the indigenous leader said, tell me your story of this land. And so the first person went in and said, my grandparents came out here from back east years ago and farmed this land and looked after it. And he talked to the second person, and he said the exact same story. And the indigenous person said, I'm going to ask the land. So the indigenous person had this talk and said, I'm going to listen to the answer of the land. So the indigenous person got down and he listened to the land. Can you hear what it says? No. The indigenous person said, I talked to the land, I listened to the land, I've listened to you, and the land tells me the land doesn't belong to you, you belong to the land. And I thought, oh. Said, so you're both charged with looking after this land, and none of you own it. And I think that's a really important idea. We often think we own things, but really, we're part of the planet. And our idea, it's a big word, but we have this idea of interdependence. And that means we have to look after the land, and in turn, the land will look after us. So when someone tells you that they own the land, you should let them know that the land owns them too, and they've got a responsibility to look after it. So thank you so much for listening. It's time for your religious education class now. I invite you to join me in the spirit of meditation, reflection, and prayer. We honor the independent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life, and with humility we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. Those are the words from our newly adopted UU value of interdependence. Our values call us to commit to heal our planet and our relationship with it. The brokenness of our world seems vast right now and can seem overwhelming to each of us. Ours is not the task of fixing everything right now. But what can each of us do in our own small, though important part of our world? We all bring gifts, and with these gifts we can make a difference. Each of us can respond to the hardships and brokenness we experience in life by responding in a life-affirming, life-giving, life-enhancing manner. For destruction, we can bring beauty. For despair, we can bring hope. And for brokenness, we can bring healing. By working together across boundaries and partnering with others, we can bring the effort and focus needed to make a difference in the ecological care of our community. Through our thoughtful and just actions, we can bring more hope into the world for ourselves, for others, and for this planet that we love dearly. Hope does not come from determining if we can be successful. It is simply the choice to take righteous action for a just cause. When we care for our planet with our hearts, our minds, and our hands, we will be living our highest ideals of loving our neighbours and caring for all life on our planet. By bringing more beauty, love, compassion, care, hope, and justice into our relationships with each other and our world, we are also repairing our relationship with it. In doing all of this, we are giving thanks for the miracle that is each of our lives, and gratitude for this planet that nourishes us and is our home. I invite you to join me in silence.
Sitting on the sand, watching the waves glide in and out, crashing upon the shore, I am absolutely struck by the awesomeness of this earth. I listen to the surf, watch the progression of waves as they break down the beach, and feel my very small place in the vastness of our planet. There's a spot where I like to sit, and you can see a photo of it. Above, a set of Adirondack chairs donated by the family and friends of Chuck Fontana. I did not know Chuck, but I am ever grateful for that seat on the cliff overlooking the waves of Half Moon Bay that they left me in his memory. I have been sitting in this spot for many years, and fortunately, my chairs are still intact. Not true for the bench a few feet over. The cliff beneath its perch fell away, and it no longer has a place. Each time I visit, as I walk over to the chairs, I wonder if they will still be there. I wonder if the storms of this earth, increasingly violent and strong, will have taken them. The ocean is constantly changing the terrain of that which surrounds it. It is the nature of its being, to give and to take away. It shows me the preciousness of what I love and teaches me not to take for granted that my chairs will always be there. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the concern I feel for our planet. I often feel as if there is nothing I can really do to stop what seems inevitable. And that fear and worry can be paralyzing. Are we simply doomed? And in that space of fear and worry, I pull myself out by allowing myself to be awed by what I see around me. We are so blessed to live in such an extraordinary place. I force myself to notice the intricacies of the flowers blooming in my neighborhood, the vastness of the clouds moving across the blue sky, and the changing colors of the hills along the freeway. Digging my toes into the sand, tiny grains fall away. Each tiny grain together makes up my beautiful beach. I wonder, what grain of sand size contribution could I make towards healing this planet? As Lao Tzu said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Taking steps to effectively care for our planet is easier said than done. Everything seems so small compared to the challenges we face. And yet, I hope that every little bit counts. And perhaps all of our little bits together could count a lot. I recently started using Ridwell to recycle plastic film. And that, along with composting, has reduced the number of bags that I put in my garbage can by more than half. I drive an electric car, and I try to avoid eating beef. I am trying to commit to purchasing the majority of my clothes secondhand, selling back the clothing that I no longer wear, and using sites like ThreadUp and Poshmark to buy new-to-me items, like I'm wearing right now. These are small choices, but they remind me that I do have a part to play. Each act, though modest, I hope becomes a thread in the fabric of change. To belong to this planet is to recognize that I am both held by it and accountable to it. The chairs on the cliff, the grains of sand, the clouds in the sky, all remind me that nothing is permanent and everything is precious. My belonging is not passive. It asks me to notice, to cherish, and to act, even when my actions feel small. It is through these small gestures that I find my place in the interdependent web of all existence. And so I return again and again to my chairs at the beach, with humility and reverence, grateful to belong to this earth that I call home.
That hymn we just sung was composed by Reverend Mark Bellatini, a retired Unitarian Universalist minister, and he also wrote this beautiful sonata for voice and silence. I'd like to begin today's sermon with this, with his words. The earth, one planet, round, global, so that when you trace its shape with your finger, you end up where you started. It's one. It's whole. All the dotted lines we draw on our maps of this globe are just that. Dotted lines. They smear easily. Oceans can be crossed. Even the deserts can be crossed. The grain that grows on one side of the border tastes just as good as the grain on the other side. Moreover, bread made from rice can be just as nourishing to body and spirit as bread made from corn or spelt or teff or wheat or barley. There is no superior land, no chosen site, no divine destiny falling on one nation who draws those dotted lines just so. There is only one earth we all share, we the living, with all else that lives and does not live. Everything for good or ill, is part of the shared whole. Sky, earth, song, words, and now, silence. Those are the words of Reverend Mark Bellatini. And I love when he talks about the earth, the globe, and the dotted lines, because I think many of us, and I remember being vividly struck when we were able to get that first photograph of the earth from space. There was no boundaries, except for the boundary between land and sea. And it really, in many ways, gave us a sense of the oneness that we all are. We are part of this living organism of the earth. And the separations that we have, we create. Liz talked beautifully about the reverence she feels for our planet. And it's part of our UU values of interdependence, which I started the prayer I gave earlier with, where it acknowledges, with reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. And I really had a strong sense of that this summer when I went back to a town in Scotland called Oban, where I worked in a hotel 45 years ago as a hall porter. I know I don't look that old. And can you put the picture up? And this is the picture from outside the hotel of where I worked 45 years ago. And this was at sunset, and I stood there for half an hour as the sun was setting in all the different colours. And then I thought, wait, after half an hour, I better take a photograph because I'll forget this, what this looks like. I didn't take it so I could bring it here. Thank you. But there was a feeling of ultra connectedness to the planet that time. Of course, I was connecting with the space and the beauty and the changing light. I was also connecting with memories from 45 years ago as an earnest 18-year-old doing a summer job of a hall porter and everything that's happened in between. So there's this kind of connectedness across space, but also connectedness across time. And I thought about the people I worked with there who I've not seen since. So Earth and the planet does have this power, nature does have this power to create this feeling of genuine awe and wonder in us. We cherish it. And one of the biggest changes that happened late on in our definition of interdependence was the word we covenant to cherish the earth and all beings from exploitation changed to we covenant to protect earth and all beings. It went from cherish to protect. Because it's easy to cherish something and not do anything to protect it. Our promise is we covenant to protect it. We have agency. And there's an old joke from Scotland about the minister out walking in the countryside, and he sees a farmer leaning on the fence looking over his field, and the minister goes up to the farmer and says, "You and God have done a beautiful job of taking care of this field." And the farmer turns around and says, "Well, you should have seen the mess it was when God was working on it by himself." We have agency. We can be partners, co-creating with the divine, with the co-creators with the divine of the beauty, of the wonder, of the awesomeness, of the generated reverence that the earth can create. But what kind of stewards have we been of the planet up until now? I think many of us are concerned. And Liz shared about how feeling overwhelmed with the state of the planet, and I too feel that. But the American writer Rebecca Solnit, who lives in San Francisco, she says the stories we tell about something can define the actions we take. The stories we tell about something can define the actions we take. So if the stories of climate justice, of climate change, are of overwhelm, of just cherishing, I don't think it's enough. Rebecca Solnit also goes on to say that we often think we're the end of the story. We are always in the middle of the story. We are always in the middle of the story. The story of climate change has not been written, has not been finished. And that's an important story to tell ourselves, that the story is not complete. There's another beautiful story from Oxford College. In Oxford College at the University of Oxford in England, they have this beautiful 16th century oak ceiling. If you ever see pictures of it, you can check out it. It's absolutely beautiful. It got beetle infested recently. And they were looking like, how can we replace this old oak? And they couldn't get it anywhere. This species of oak they couldn't find anywhere. So they thought they were going to have to redo the architecture of the place. And then, I think only University of Oxford has this, but they have their own forester, a person who looks after trees. And he heard about this, that they were looking to do some redesign. He said, well, you know, we planted a whole bunch of these 400 years ago, of these trees in a corner of the university. I was been wondering when you were going to come and ask me about it. And they realized that someone 400 years ago realized at some time in the future, not knowing, they would plant these trees that could be used. And I think we've lost that sense of, I think part with the loss of connection with nature, we've lost that connection of replenishing and taking that long-term view, because I know as an individual, I tend to take a short-term view. I think you see it with the corporate world, and you see it with our government. The government's looking at the next election. The corporation is looking to the next quarterly results, and we often don't see much beyond our weekly paycheck or our short lifespan. So we have the solutions to the climate crisis. I truly believe that. That's the other story we have to tell ourselves. We have the solutions. We don't have the political will and the economic incentives to make it happen. I think we know what the solutions are. Renewable energy, there's conservation, recycling. There's all these things we know we need to do. We do not have the political will, we do not have the incentives, and we don't have the cultural awareness to make these changes. And religious communities at their best is about changing culture, transforming culture. So the work is on us. We have to take that agency like the farmer did to create that beautiful field, like the foresters did to plant trees that would be used in 400 years' time to repair this beautiful roof in Oxford College. We have the solutions, but not the political will or economic incentives to do it yet. We're still in the middle of the story. The writer Rachel Naomi Remen says, "We are not called to fix the world because it's broken. We are here to serve it because it is holy." So I invite you, what's your story of climate change? What's the story you tell yourself about climate change? Is it just about being overwhelmed and there's too much to do, not knowing what to do? How would you like to change your story around climate justice and climate change? I want to give you an example of something we've done here in this community over the last year. Yesterday, Peter Hartzell and I were invited to go and speak to the UUs of San Jose about the work that we've been doing, a group of us have been doing here. It started with the Climate Justice Revival a year ago. And a group of leaders from this community took what happened at the Climate Justice Revival and created this group, Climate Justice Action, which we were presenting about yesterday. And it wasn't until you start presenting to other people you realize what we've done. And earlier this week, Beth Harrison, in a meeting I was in with her, said to me, it's like, what gives you hope? And I had to think about that. I thought, wait, I deal in hope. I should know the answer to this. I said, what gives me hope is the people around me. It's not the planet, the beauty of the planet or the earth. It's the people around me who are doing work to take care of the planet. You may get your hope from a different place. I just hope you get it from somewhere. But I get it from the people around me. And this Climate Justice Action Group has done wonderful work in advocating for the community, for doing direct service projects, small, done in a day. They're also looking to do some longer term projects, but they're doing all this by connecting with local communities, especially communities led by people of colour, because often they are the most impacted by environmental degradation. They're often living with the most fragile lives and are most vulnerable to the hardships caused by the environment, caused by disasters, caused by wildfires, caused by flooding, caused by loss of power, caused by heat waves. So this group's really taken a lot of work in doing that, and the advocacy work that we do is vital. If we don't have an advocacy component to our justice work, it's not really justice work. And by advocacy, I mean changing behavior, changing government policy, changing laws, changing economic incentives. That's the advocacy work that we need to do to change things, because let's be honest, the real climate justice work that needs to be done at the state level, the national level, the international level. That's where the change happens. I said it a year and a half ago from this pulpit. We could all change our carbon offsets to zero, our carbon footprints to zero, and it's not going to change anything. We need to change government policy. We need to change economic incentives of businesses. That's the work that we need to do. And on the 11th of June this year, which is my birthday, a bunch of us were at the state capitol in California, advocating around various climate justice bills. And can you put up the photographs, please? You see, even at the state capitol I preach. Then the guy in the black suit, he's one of the staffers for our local state senator, Josh Becker. Have you noticed there's a whole group of us there? I could go to the next picture. And that's us. We actually met Josh Becker when he came out of the building, who's our local state senator, who does some of the best environmental policy and gets it through the state legislature of anyone in California. And he came out and he met us. That's him standing behind Bev Morgan in the green shirt, in case you're wondering who your local state senator is. That's him. But there's a group of us, and there was, Beth Harrison was there, Carol Cross, Mariana Raymond, Debbie Mytel, Cindy Burke and staff, John Cooney, Ron Hess, Kate Kay Bonney, Bev Morgan, and Peter Hartzell. And those were the core who went from this group under the leadership of that Climate Justice Action Group. So that's what gives me hope. That event was incredibly hopeful. You go to the corridors of power there in the state capitol, it's kind of scary. People know where they're going. People understand the legislation. We usually don't, but by the end of the day, I know a number of us felt a lot more comfortable than we did at the beginning of the day. And that's the important work I want more of us to get involved with. If you're not hopeful about the planet, go and do a lobby day. That was done through California Interfaith Power and Light. Go to a lobby day and advocate for it. That's the biggest source of hope for me. Cherishing the planet is great. Taking action to care for it is transformative for us, and I hope for the planet. So that's the work I'd like us to consider doing in the future. And next year, next calendar year, there's a really important bill that's coming through that I'm not sure it's going to succeed, and it's called Make Polluters Pay. And I want us to be at the forefront of advocating for this bill. Because what it is, it's creating a climate super fund for those paid into by those companies who have caused pollution that's impacted California. And there's a lot of very complex modeling that I confess to not fully understanding that actually can attribute, the certain disasters, certain climate, temperature rises to specific companies, asking those companies to pay in for the last 24 years to mitigate and to compensate for the hardship, the destruction of wildfires, the flooding, the temperature rise, to the people most impacted. You can imagine a lot of these companies don't want to pay into that. But these are companies that have got a lot of money and have earned a lot of money, and I'm fed up with taxpayers footing the bill for the risk and the consequences of this, and the companies just walking away with the profits. The companies need some accountability. We all expect responsibility and accountability for ourselves, to our religious community, to our families, to the wider community. I want companies to share the same accountability and responsibility for the impact they're causing in the planet. That's what that bill is. It's complex, but that's the work that I think we need to be doing for climate justice advocacy in the coming year. Working with our politicians who are trying to make this happen. We all agree with accountability and responsibility for everybody, and I think that needs to include these corporations who just want the profit and don't want the risk and the accountability. We need to provide that. We need the legislation to provide that accountability. And that will motivate companies to take better care of the planet and not just see it as a resource to exploit. That's the work I want us to engage in the coming year around advocacy. I think is vitally important. And I think by engaging in it, that's what will give me hope. So to finish this service, I want to offer you a chance to reflect yourself. I'm going to do an activity. We've done it before. And it comes from the Quaker tradition. It's a Quaker meditation. And it's in the form of a query, where I put queries to you and you get a chance to reflect on it. And a query does not require an answer in the moment. But the hope, and my hope is, inspires you to meditate on the topic and follow up with action. So join me in this Quaker meditation. Am I walking gently on the earth? Do I live simply, mindful of how my life affects earth and her resources? Do I honor the life of all living things, the order of nature, and the wildness of wilderness? Do I take opportunities to foster a cooperative relationship with the natural world? Do I engage with conversations with a variety of people about care and healing of our planet? What aspects of my eating habits concerns me ethically? What could we consider changing? What am I doing to teach children and adults to cherish and protect the intricate web of life? What action am I taking to reverse the destruction of Earth's ecosystems and promote healing? Do I support local, state, national and international organizations protecting the environment? Am I aware of the source of my energy consumed in my home? Am I learning to walk more gently on the earth? Blessed be, and amen.